A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Chapter 1. The Scent That Broke a Brotherhood. Two alpha twins who shared everything. Power, victories, women, until the night they both smelled her. And for the first time in 28 years, one of them whispered the word they swore they'd never say to each other. Mine. The Vale territory border at 2:17 a.m. was a place most wolves crossed only once in their lives, and never on foot. Ariel Blackwood stepped off the midnight bus with nothing but a worn leather satchel, a forged ID, and a heartbeat that hadn't slowed since the moment she'd accepted the job offer. The driver didn't wait. He shut the doors and disappeared into the storm, taillights bleeding red through the downpour. She pulled her hood lower. Cold rain slid down her neck like fingers. She tasted pine, wet granite, and something darker underneath, something alive and prowling. The scent of the most powerful pack on the continent, the scent of the men she had sworn she would never stand within 100 miles of. She took one step, then another, and the forest answered. 2 miles away, inside the obsidian fortress that crowned Black Ridge, Cassian Vale snapped awake in his bed, claws shredding silk sheets. His wolf surged so violently his vision bled gold. A scent, midnight rain and wild honey, impossible, addictive, slammed into him like a physical blow. Across the marble corridor, Lucian Vale tore out of his own rooms at the exact same second. Shirtless, eyes blazing the same feral amber. They collided in the hallway, chests heaving, fangs bared. Both of them growling the same word at the exact same time. Mine! For one suspended heartbeat, the brothers stared at each other, rain drumming the stained glass skylight above them. They had shared everything since the womb. Battles, thrones, beds. They had made a blood oath under the moon the day they turned 18. No female would ever come between them. If fate gave them a Luna, she would belong to both or to neither. Tonight that oath cracked like old ice. Cassian's voice came out rougher than he intended. Border Patrol just radioed. Lone female, human transport drop-off. Lucian's lip curled. She's not human. No, Cassian agreed, throat raw. She's ours. They moved without another word, two predators in perfect, terrifying sync, racing down spiral stairs, through torch-lit halls, past guards who dropped to their knees at the storm rolling off their alphas. Back at the border, Ariel felt the shift in the air a second before the shadows moved. One moment the road was empty. The next, Cassian Vale stood 10 feet away, rain streaming off black hair, in a black leather coat that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. Moonlight carved sharp cheekbones, a jaw clenched so tight it could cut glass. Gold eyes locked on her like she was prey and prayer all at once. She couldn't breathe. Then another silhouette melted out of the darkness on her left, identical mirror image lethal, but where Cassian burned cold, this one radiated heat. Lucian. A half smirk played on lips that promised ruin, and his gaze dragged down her body like a touch. Ariel's knees almost buckled. The mating scent rolling off them was a tidal wave, cedar smoke, winter storm, dark chocolate, and something feral that clawed straight between her thighs. Her own scent answered before she could stop it, sweet, wild, terrified, flooding the air. Cassian inhaled sharply like a man who'd been drowning for years and just found oxygen. Lucian let out a low, reverent curse. She took one instinctive step back. Cassian moved first, slow, deliberate, the way you approach a spooked mare you have no intention of letting escape. Water dripped from his lashes. Name, he said, voice velvet over steel. Ariel swallowed. Blackwood, she managed. Ariel Blackwood, I'm expected. The archive position. Lucian circled, not touching, but close enough she felt the heat radiating off his skin. Expected, he echoed, tasting the lie in it. Funny, no one told us the most delicious thing we'd ever smelled was walking straight into our den tonight. Her pulse thundered so loudly she was sure they heard it. Cassian's gaze dropped to the frantic beat at her throat, lingered, darkened. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost gentle, and somehow 1,000 times more dangerous. You're shaking, little star. He lifted one hand, palm up, rain pooling in the center like an offering. Come here. Every survival instinct screamed run. Every cell in her body leaned forward instead. Lucian stepped in behind her, not quite touching, but close enough that his breath stirred the wet hair at her nape. "We don't bite," he murmured against her ear, lips brushing the shell, "unless you beg prettily." Ariel's breath hitched. Audible, traitorous. Cassian's eyes flared brighter at the sound. She forced her spine straight. "I'm here to work," she said, and hated how fragile it came out. Cassian's smile was slow, wolfish, heartbreakingly beautiful. "Of course you are." He closed the distance in one stride, cupped her chin with fingers that trembled, he was trembling, and tilted her face to the storm. Rain slid over both of them like a baptism. "Work can wait until morning," he said. "Tonight you're ours to take care of." Lucian's hands settled on her hips from behind, light, possessive, grounding. "Say yes, Ariel," he whispered, lips grazing the shell of her ear. "Just for tonight. Let us get you warm." She should have said no. She should have bolted into the trees and never looked back. Instead, she heard her own voice, small and steady and doomed. "Yes." The word hung in the storm like a struck match. Cassian's eyes flared molten gold. He took the final step, closing the space until the rain had nowhere left to fall between them. His hand lifted slowly, deliberately, giving her every heartbeat to pull away. She didn't. He cupped her jaw with fingers that trembled, just barely, and tilted her face to his. His thumb swept once across her lower lip, parting it on a shaky inhale that belonged to both of them. Ariel felt the heat of his mouth a breath away, felt the promise of it, the ruin of it. Cassian's voice was raw, almost broken. "Tell me to stop." She couldn't. The word dissolved somewhere between her lungs and her tongue. Lucian's grip tightened on her hips, anchoring her as Cassian leaned in, agonizingly slow, until his lips hovered a whisper from hers. Not touching, never quite touching, just the heat. Just the tremor in his breath that told her he was holding on by a thread. Cassian whispered against her mouth, voice reverent, broken with awe. "You're going to destroy us." Ariel's knees buckled. Lucian caught her instantly, chest to her back, a low growl rumbling through her bones as he buried his face in her wet hair and inhaled like a man who'd finally found air after years underwater. Cassian stayed exactly where he was, lips brushing hers with every shaken exhale. Once, twice, feather light, barely there, enough to brand the shape of him into her soul without ever crossing the line. Then he pulled back a fraction, eyes blazing, voice shredded. "Not here," he rasped. "Not like this. Not when you still smell like fear." Lucian's agreement was a dark, hungry sound against the nape of her neck. "Soon, little star," he promised, teeth grazing the same spot Cassian had just abandoned. "Very, very soon." Cassian pressed the softest, barely there kiss to the corner of her mouth, just enough to make her chase it, just enough to leave her aching, ruined, starving. Then he stepped back into the rain, offering his hand again, palm open, rain pooling like liquid starlight. "Welcome to Vale territory, little star," he said, voice velvet and lethal. "You just became the most wanted woman alive." Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating 3 silhouettes trembling in the storm. 2 alphas and the woman whose scent had just shattered 28 years of brotherhood into glittering, impossible pieces. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, long, mournful, already mourning what was coming. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Walls. She was 8 years old when she hid inside the wall and watched her own father slaughter their parents in rivers of blood. 20 years later, she walked straight into the twins' castle wearing a fake name, and they have no idea the girl they're falling for is the enemy's daughter. The first time Ariel ever saw the inside of Black Ridge Keep, the halls were on fire and the air tasted like copper. She remembered it in pieces that never stayed buried. Her father's monstrous black wolf tearing through the great hall. The former Alpha Vale's mate screaming as claws opened her throat. And then a huge blood-streaked hand punching through burning plaster, wrapping around 8-year-old Ariel's waist and yanking her into the cold night. A broken voice, impossibly gentle for how much blood soaked it. Live, child, but never come back. She hadn't understood then. She understood now. 20 years later, the same fortress rose above her like a verdict carved in obsidian. Ariel stood alone in the Grand Archive at 1:27 a.m., surrounded by shelves that climbed 3 stories into shadow. Moonlight bled through stained glass windows, painting the leather spines crimson and indigo. The air smelled of old parchment, cedar, and something darker, something that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. She reached for a crumbling grimoire on the highest shelf, fingers brushing dust, when the temperature in the room plummeted. Not cold. Pressure. Lucian Vale stepped out of the darkness between the stacks like he'd been waiting there for centuries. No footsteps. No warning. Just suddenly, 6'4" of lethal grace in a black Henley rolled to the elbows, ink crawling over corded forearms, amber eyes glowing soft gold in the gloom. Ariel's heart slammed against her ribs so hard she tasted iron. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her like he was memorizing the exact shape of the thing that had broken his sleep for the last 3 nights. "You're up late, little archivist," he finally said, voice low, amused, and far too intimate. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted before she could stop herself. Lucian's slow smile was a weapon. "Neither could we." He prowled closer, every step deliberate, giving her 1,000 chances to run. She stayed rooted, fingers curled tight around the book she no longer cared about. When he stopped, they were less than a foot apart. Close enough she felt the heat rolling off him, cut through the library chill. Close enough she smelled cedar smoke and storm on his skin, and her own scent answered helplessly, sweet, frightened, hungry. Lucian noticed. Of course he noticed. One calloused fingertip lifted, hovered beneath her chin without touching, tracing the air just above her pulse. "You've been avoiding us for 3 days," he murmured, "walking the long way around corridors, taking meals in your room, pretending you don't feel it too." Ariel's throat worked. "I'm here to work." "Liar," he whispered, reverent. His hand finally made contact, slow enough she could have stepped back. She didn't. He cupped the side of her throat, thumbs settling over the frantic beat of her carotid like he was claiming it. His eyes dropped to her mouth. "Tell me to stop," he said, voice rough as broken glass wrapped in velvet. "Say the word and I walk away right now." The library held its breath. Ariel's lips parted. No sound came out. Lucian's control fractured, but only just. He backed her into the shelves with the patience of a hunter who already knew the prey wasn't going anywhere. One hand braced beside her head, caging her without trapping her. The other stayed at her throat, gentle, possessive, grounding. His mouth hovered a breath from hers. "Tell me your name again," he demanded, barely audible. "Ariel." "Say it like it belongs to me." She whimpered, actually whimpered. Lucian's eyes flared molten. He leaned in until his lips brushed hers with every shake and exhale. Once, twice, featherlight, never quite closing the distance. Just the promise. Just the torment. Ariel's hands fisted in his shirt without permission, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed danger. He let her. Let her drag him in until their bodies aligned, until she felt exactly how badly he wanted her, until the only thing keeping them apart was the thin, trembling thread of his restraint. Lucian's voice cracked against her lips. "Cassian's going to lose his mind when he finds out I got this close without him." Ariel's breath fractured. Shh." His thumb swept over her lower lip, parting it. "He'll live. We share everything. Eventually." The word eventually dripped with dark, delicious promise. Footsteps echoed suddenly in the corridor, heavy, impatient, unmistakably furious. Lucian's head snapped up, fangs lengthening on instinct, a growl rumbling low and protective. Cassian Vale filled the doorway like judgment made flesh. Rain still clung to his hair from night patrol. His gaze went straight to Lucian's hand on her throat, to Ariel's white-knuckled grip on his brother's shirt, to the way her lips were swollen and trembling from almost kisses. Something ancient and furious flashed across Cassian's face. Then it smoothed into a smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Interrupting something?" he asked, voice deceptively calm. Lucian didn't move. Just making sure our archivist feels welcome. Cassian stepped into the library and shut the doors with a soft, final click that sounded like a cage locking. The room shrank to the size of a heartbeat. He crossed the distance in 4 strides and stopped just short of touching her, close enough she felt the storm rolling off him in waves. Cassian's knuckles brushed her cheek, the side Lucian hadn't claimed, like he was marking the other half of her face. I can smell him on you, he said, voice low, lethal, and aching. I can smell how much you wanted it. Ariel's knees buckled. Lucian's arm slid around her waist instantly, holding her up, his growl vibrating through her spine. Cassian leaned in until his lips grazed the shell of her ear. Next time you let my brother get this close, he whispered, you wait until I'm there to watch. Ariel's breath hitched so hard it hurt. Lucian's lips curved against the back of her neck. Or to join, he added, teeth scraping the exact spot that made her see stars. She was going to combust. Right here between 2 alphas who had no idea she was the living ghost of their worst nightmare. Cassian pulled back just far enough to meet her eyes. Gold on green, predator on prey. Except the prey was trembling for entirely different reasons now. Tomorrow, he said, voice rough with restraint. You work. Tonight. He never finished, because that was when the memory hit her full force. Uninvited. Merciless. 8 years old. The great hall burning. This very library collapsing while she hid inside the walls. Small hands pressed over her mouth to keep from screaming. And 2 little boys, maybe 10, identical, covered in soot and blood, being dragged past their parents' bodies, both of them howling her father's name like a curse. Cassian and Lucian, the boys whose parents her father had slaughtered. The boys whose father had pulled her from the flames and spared her life. Ariel jerked away from both of them so violently the book she'd been holding crashed to the floor. Lucian reached for her. Ariel, I need air. She wrenched free, stumbling toward the doors, chest heaving like she'd been running for miles. Cassian started after her, voice sharp with concern. What the hell just... Lucian caught his arm, eyes narrowed on her retreating back. Something in her scent had shifted, sharp with terror, sour with guilt. Let her go, Lucian said quietly. For tonight. Cassian's jaw flexed, claws pricking his palms until blood dripped. But he obeyed. Fists clenched so tight the scars on his knuckles went white. They watched her disappear into the corridor, cloak clutched tight, footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. Lucian spoke first, voice raw. She's hiding something big. Cassian's eyes glowed molten. Then we find it. Lucian turned, gaze dropping to the book that had fallen in her panic. He crouched, picked it up. The cover was ancient blood-red leather, embossed with the royal crest of the Ash Court, the crest that belonged to the Rogue King. Lucian's fingers went white around the spine. Cassian saw it at the same moment. They looked at each other in the moonlit dark, and for the first time since the night they were born, the twins felt true, icy fear crawl up their spines. Chapter 3. The mark beneath her hair. The great hall of Black Ridge Keep had not felt this alive in 20 years. Torches blazed in iron sconces. Long tables groaned beneath roasted venison, honeyed figs, and dark wine that stained lips like blood. Musicians played wild ancient songs that made wolves want to shift and run and claim. Tonight was the welcoming feast for the new archivist. Officially, unofficially, every unmated wolf in the Vale Pack had come to see the female whose scent had driven their alphas half-mad for a week. Ariel stood at the edge of the crowd in a borrowed midnight blue gown that clung to every curve she usually hid. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. Someone in the household had insisted. She hated it. The exposed nape felt like an invitation she wasn't ready to give. Cassian and Lucian sat at the high table like twin gods of war and ruin, black formal shirts open at the throat, eyes never leaving her. Every time her gaze accidentally met theirs, heat speared straight through her stomach. She had spent 7 days avoiding them. 7 days of cataloging books with shaking hands. 7 nights of dreams that left her sheets twisted and her skin burning. Tonight there was no escaping. A bell rang. The betas began herding guests to their seats. Ariel tried to slip toward the back tables with the scholars. A large, warm hand closed around her wrist. Cassian. His thumb brushed the inside of her pulse, once deliberate. "Not there, little star," he murmured, voice low enough only she heard. "You sit with us." Before she could protest, Lucian appeared on her other side, fingers ghosting the small of her back. "Tradition," he added, lips curved in that half-smirk that promised trouble. "The archivist is honored at the high table." Together they guided her up the dais steps, a matched set of predators herding the most dangerous prey they'd ever touched. The hall fell into a hush as she took the seat between them. Cassian on her left, Lucian on her right, close enough their thighs brushed hers beneath the table. Wine was poured, toasts were made to the pack, to the moon, to the new archivist whose scent was already driving half the room feral. Ariel kept her eyes on her plate. Cassian leaned in, lips at her ear. "You look terrified," he whispered. "We won't let anyone touch you." Lucian's hand settled on her knee under the table. Warm, steady, claiming. "Except us," he added, so softly she almost missed it. Her fork slipped, clinking loudly against porcelain. Conversation flowed around them. Laughter, stories, the easy rhythm of a pack at peace. Then it happened. An elder near the far end stood to offer a blessing. Ancient, white-haired, eyes milky with age but sharp as broken glass. He looked straight at Ariel, his gaze snagged on the exposed nape of her neck, on the faint crescent scar hidden at her hairline that the elegant twist had accidentally revealed. The old wolf froze. The blessing died on his tongue. Ariel felt the moment the air changed, felt every eye turn, felt the temperature plummet. The elder's voice cracked across the hall like a gunshot. "Princess Ariella." Silence. Absolute. Deafening. Ariel's wineglass slipped from her fingers and shattered on stone. Cassian and Lucian were on their feet in the same heartbeat, bodies angled in front of her, growls rumbling low and lethal. The elder took one trembling step forward. "That mark," he rasped, "Ash Court Royal Crest. I was there the night the rogue king burned this hall. I saw his daughter wear that same scar." Gas rippled outward like circles in dark water. Cassian's voice cut through the chaos, cold as winter steel. "Elder Torin, you will explain yourself. Now." But the old wolf was already sinking to his knees, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his cheeks. "I thought she died in the fire," he whispered. "The princess, the rogue king's heir." Ariel couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed run, shift, disappear into the night and never stop. But Cassian's hand found hers under the table, fingers threading tight, grounding. Lucian's arm slid around her shoulders, a living shield. They didn't know yet. They couldn't know. But the entire hall was staring at her like she was a ghost made flesh. Cassian turned to her, eyes searching, confused, protective fury rolling off him in waves. "Ariel," he said, low, urgent. "Look at me." She couldn't. Lucian's grip tightened. "Little star, breathe." She wrenched free instead, chair scraping loud as a scream. I need air," she choked out, and bolted. The crowd parted like water before a storm. She made it to the balcony doors, flung them open, stumbled into the cold night. Moonlight poured over her like judgment. Behind her, chaos erupted, voices rising, accusations, demands. Cassian and Lucian's roars cut through it all, two alphas commanding silence, demanding answers. Ariel pressed her back to the stone balustrade, chest heaving, tears burning tracks down her cheeks. She heard heavy footsteps, two sets, fast and furious. Cassian reached her first, hands hovering like he was afraid she'd shatter. "Ariel!" She shook her head violently. "Don't!" Lucian arrived a breath later, shoulder to shoulder with his twin, both of them blocking her from the hall, from the pack, from the world. Cassian's voice was raw. "That mark, the things he said, tell us it isn't true." She couldn't. Lucian stepped closer, gentle, lethal. "Whatever it is," he said, voice steady as iron, "we'll fix it. We'll protect you. Just talk to us." Ariel laughed, broken, bitter. "You can't protect me from this," she whispered. "Not from who I am." Cassian's hand lifted, slow, giving her every chance to pull away. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Then let us stand with you anyway," he said. Behind them, the feast dissolved into shouting. Inside, the past was bleeding into the present, and on the balcony, under a moon that had seen everything, three hearts beat in fractured rhythm, already bound by something none of them understood yet. Ariel looked up at the identical gold eyes that had haunted her dreams for 20 years. Two alphas, one impossible truth, and the mark on her skin that was about to burn their world down. Chapter 4. Moonlit Lies and Stolen Kisses. The hunter's moon hung low and swollen, bleeding crimson across the sky like an open wound. It was the one night of the year when every wolf in the territory was commanded to run, to hunt, to feel the wild in their blood and answer it. No titles, no ranks, just pack, moon, and instinct. Ariel had planned to hide in her room with the curtains drawn and every lock bolted. She lasted 43 minutes. The pull was physical, a hot ache behind her ribs, a whisper in her blood that sounded too much like their names. She found herself barefoot on the east balcony, silk robe fluttering around her calves, moonlight painting silver across her collarbones. Below, the courtyard was alive with wolves, some still human, some already shifting, laughter and howls rising like smoke. Then she felt them. Cassian and Lucian stepped out of the shadows at the foot of the grand staircase, shirtless, moonlight carving every hard line of muscle and old battle scars. They hadn't shifted yet. Their eyes were locked on her balcony like she was the only prey in the world worth chasing. Cassian lifted one hand, palm open, an invitation, a command. Lucian's slow smile promised ruin and worship in the same breath. Ariel's heart thundered so loud she was sure the entire pack heard it. She should have gone back inside. Instead, she descended the stairs like a woman walking to her own execution or her coronation. They met her at the bottom. No words at first. Cassian reached her first, fingers sliding along her jaw, tilting her face to the bloody moon. His thumb brushed her lower lip, parting it on a shaky inhale. "You came," he said, voice rough with relief and hunger. Lucian stepped in behind her, chest to her back, hands settling on her hips like they belonged there. "We were starting to think you'd make us come fetch you," he murmured against her ear. Ariel's breath trembled. I don't know what I'm doing." Cassian's smile was soft, devastating. "Then let us show you." They led her away from the crowd, through a hidden garden door, into the old greenhouse that glowed with moonlight and hanging vines. The air inside was warm, thick with night-blooming jasmine and the scent of turned earth. Glass walls rose around them, fogged in silver. Cassian stopped in the center beneath a canopy of moonlit leaves. He turned to her, eyes glowing soft gold. "We won't take anything you don't give," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever." Lucian's hands slid up her arms, slow, reverent. "But the moon is high," he whispered, lips grazing the shell of her ear. "And we've been dying to taste you for weeks." Ariel's knees almost gave out. Cassian caught her, hands framing her face. "Say yes, little star," he breathed. "Just yes." She couldn't speak. She nodded instead, small, trembling, undone. The sound Cassian made was almost a growl, almost a prayer. He kissed her first, slow, deep, worshipful. His mouth moved over hers like he was memorizing every breath, every shiver. Ariel melted into him, hands fisting in the warm skin of his back, feeling the flecks of muscle beneath her palms. Lucian waited, patient and predatory, until Cassian pulled back just enough to let her breathe. Then Lucian turned her gently, cupped her face, and took her mouth like a man who had been starving for years. Slower than Cassian, darker. His tongue traced hers in long, languid strokes that made her knees buckle again. Cassian pressed against her back, lips trailing fire down the side of her neck, teeth scraping the spot that made her gasp into Lucian's kiss. Hands moved, careful, reverent, desperate. Cassian's fingers slipped the silk robe from her shoulders, letting it pool at her feet. Lucian's palms slid down her sides, mapping every curve through the thin nightgown she wore beneath. Ariel was trembling between them, surrounded, consumed, and somehow safer than she'd ever been. Cassian's mouth found the hollow beneath her ear. "Let us take care of you," he whispered against her skin. Lucian's hand settled on her waist, pulling her flush against him, letting her feel exactly how much he wanted her. "Only what you want," he promised, voice ragged. "Only ever what you want." The moon climbed higher. Time lost meaning. There were kisses that tasted like forgiveness, and kisses that tasted like sin. Hands that worshipped and mouths that claimed. Whispers of her name like it was sacred. Ariel lost track of where one brother ended and the other began. She was lifted at some point, carried to a cushioned bench beneath the glass ceiling, laid down like something priceless. Cassian knelt at her feet, pressing slow, open-mouthed kisses up the inside of one calf. Lucian stretched out beside her, mouth tracing the line of her collarbone, fingers threading through hers and squeezing tight. Every touch asked, every touch waited for the soft, broken yes she gave again and again. The heat built slowly, relentlessly, until Ariel was arching between them, breathless, desperate, tears of overwhelm slipping from the corners of her eyes. Cassian kissed them away. Lucian whispered her name like a vow, and when the pleasure finally crested, when she shattered silently beneath the hunter's moon, with both their names on her lips, they held her through it, arms wrapped tight, hearts pounding in perfect sync with hers. After, they stayed wrapped around her, moonlight painting silver across sweat-slick skin and tangled limbs. Cassian pressed his lips to her temple. "Stay," he whispered. "Just stay." Lucian's fingers traced lazy circles on her hip. "We're not done with you yet, little star," he murmured, soft and sated and possessive. "Not even close." Ariel drifted in the haze, safe for the first time in 20 years. Guilt and terror held at bay by the warmth of the two men who would hate her tomorrow if they ever learned the truth. Morning crept in on soft gray feet. She woke alone on the bench, wrapped in Cassian's shirt and Lucian's jacket, the scent of them clinging to her skin like a brand. A single red moonflower lay on the cushion beside her, and tucked beneath it, the one thing she'd prayed never to see again, her childhood locket. The one she'd buried in a forest grave 10 years ago. The one that held a tiny charcoal drawing signed in a child's scrawl, "We'll find you again, little star, C and L." Her blood turned to ice. She sat up slowly, heart hammering against her ribs. Footsteps approached through the vines. 2 sets, familiar, beloved, and suddenly terrifying. Cassian and Lucian stepped into the greenhouse carrying breakfast trays and matching soft, reverent smiles. They hadn't seen the locket yet, but they would, and when they did, everything would burn. Ariel clutched the locket to her chest and met the eyes of the only 2 men she'd ever let herself love. The hunter's moon had set. The truth was rising. Chapter 5. Whispers travel faster than wolves. The morning after the hunter's moon smelled like crushed moonflowers and regret. Ariel stood in the war room of Black Ridge Keep, wearing yesterday's nightgown beneath Lucian's jacket, barefoot, hair tangled, lips still swollen from their kisses. Cassian and Lucian faced her across the ancient oak table, both of them unnaturally still. Between them lay the evidence, the locket open, the child's drawing staring up like an accusation, a grainy photograph of 8-year-old Princess Ariella of the Ash Court, crescent birthmark visible at her hairline, a sworn testimony from Elder Torin written in shaking ink, a lock of black hair tied with a blood-red ribbon, hers taken the night of the massacre. Cassian's voice was the first to break the silence, soft, lethal. "Tell me it isn't you." Ariel couldn't look at him, couldn't look at either of them. Lucian's knuckles were white where he gripped the table's edge. "Say something, Ariel," he said, voice cracking on her name. "Anything." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Cassian stepped forward slowly. Like every movement hurt, he picked up the locket with fingers that trembled. The tiny drawing inside showed 2 dark-haired boys and a small girl holding their hands beneath a crudely drawn moon. On the back, in faded charcoal, "We'll find you again, little star, C and L." Cassian's breath left him like he'd been punched. Lucian made a sound, half growl, half sob, and turned away, shoulders rigid. The silence stretched until it screamed. Finally, Ariel found her voice, small, shredded. "I was 8, she whispered. "I didn't know what he was going to do. I hid in the walls. I watched." Her throat closed. "I watched him kill your parents. I watched everything." Cassian's eyes lifted to hers, gold bleeding into molten red. "And our father?" he asked, deadly quiet. "The man who pulled a child from the fire and sent her away with a new name. That child was you?" She nodded once. Lucian spun back, fist clenched so tight blood dripped between his fingers. "You've been sleeping between the sons of the wolves your father butchered," he rasped. "Every kiss, every touch, all of it built on a lie." Ariel flinched like he'd struck her. "I never meant—" Her voice broke. "I was going to leave. I swore I'd leave before you ever found out." Cassian laughed, bitter, broken. "Leave?" He gestured at the table, at the locket, at the mating bond already shimmering faintly in the air between the three of them. "You feel that, Ariel. You feel what the moon did last night. There is no leaving. Not anymore." Lucian stepped closer, close enough she saw the tears he refused to let fall. "Why didn't you tell us?" he demanded, voice raw. "One word, one single word the first night on the border, and we would have—" "What?" she cried. "Protected me? From your own pack? From yourselves? You would have torn me apart the second you knew my blood." Cassian's jaw flexed. "Maybe, or maybe we would have chosen you anyway." The words hung between them like a blade. Outside, the storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke. Rain lashed the tall windows in sheets. Ariel wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing. "I was a child," she said again, barely audible. "I didn't choose my father. I didn't choose any of this." Lucian's eyes closed like the words were knives. Cassian stared at her for a long, endless moment. Then he moved. Not toward her, past her. He yanked open the war room doors and roared into the corridor, voice cracking with alpha command. "Convoke the council! Now!" Footsteps thundered in response. Lucian didn't move. He just looked at her like she was dying, and he was the one bleeding out. "I held you last night," he whispered. "I felt you come apart in my arms. I thought—" His voice fractured. "I thought the moon finally gave us something good." Ariel's tears spilled over. "I'm sorry," she choked. "I'm so sorry." Beta Rowan appeared in the doorway, face pale. "The council is assembling in the Great Hall, my alphas. The elders, they're calling for blood debt." Cassian didn't look back. "Tell them we'll be there," he said, voice flat. Rowan hesitated, eyes flicking to Ariel, to the evidence, to the devastation on his alphas' faces. He bowed and vanished. The three of them stood in the wreckage of what had been the most perfect night of their lives. Cassian finally turned. His eyes were ancient, grief and fury and something heartbreakingly gentle all at once. "Whatever happens in that hall," he said, voice steady for the first time, "you will not face it alone." Lucian stepped to his brother's side, shoulder to shoulder, a united front. "We claimed you under the hunter's moon," he added, rough but certain. "Lie or no lie, child of our enemy or not, that claim stands." Ariel stared at them, tears streaming, chest heaving with sobs she couldn't stop. Outside, thunder rolled like war drums. Inside, the past and the future collided in the shape of one trembling woman and two alphas who had just chosen her over everything they'd ever been taught to hate. Cassian offered his hand across the table, covered in proof of her betrayal. "Palm up." Rain drumming the windows like 1,000 accusing hearts. "Come, little star," he said, voice raw. "Let's go find out if love really is stronger than blood." Chapter 6. The Bond That Won't Break. The Great Hall had never felt so cold. Ariel stood in the center of the ancient circle of judgment, wrists bound with silver-laced rope that burned where it touched skin. Dawn was less than an hour away. Around her, the Council of Elders sat on stone benches carved with the names of every alpha who had ever ruled the Vale Pack. Their faces were stone too. Some wept openly. Some stared at her like she was poison-made flesh. At the head of the circle, Cassian and Lucian stood like twin statues of fury and grief, shoulders touching, eyes glowing molten gold. Elder Torin rose first, voice trembling with 20 years of nightmares. "For the blood debt of Alpha Valerian and Luna Seraphine Vale," he declared, "for the massacre that left orphans and ashes, we demand the life of the rogue king's daughter. At sunrise, the sentence will be carried out." A murmur rippled through the hall, half approval, half horror. Cassian's voice cut through it like a blade. "No!" The single word cracked across the stone like thunder. Lucian stepped forward beside him, every inch the alpha. "Over our dead bodies," he added, calm, lethal, absolute. An elder gasped. "You would defy blood debt for—" "She is our mate," Cassian snarled, and the mating bond flared into existence so violently the air itself shimmered. Golden threads of light snapped into being between the three of them. Visible, undeniable, ancient magic older than any law. Ariel cried out as the bond seared behind her ribs, a white-hot brand that stole her breath and gave it back tenfold. Cassian staggered, hand pressed to his chest where a crescent mark now glowed beneath his shirt. Lucian dropped to one knee, head bowed, the same mark burning over his heart. The hall fell into stunned silence. Elder Torin's voice cracked. It cannot be. The moon would never—" "The moon already did," Cassian said, rising slowly, eyes never leaving Ariel. "Last night, under the hunter's moon, we claimed her, she claimed us. The bond is sealed." Ariel's tears fell unchecked. She hadn't known. Not truly. She'd felt the pull, the heat, the rightness, but she hadn't understood what the moon had done while she lay trembling between them. Lucian stood, walked straight to her, and snapped the silver ropes with his bare hands. The burns on her wrists bled, but the pain was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. He cupped her face, thumbs wiping away tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." He kissed her forehead, soft, reverent, fierce. "Never be sorry for being ours." Cassian joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them, shielding her from the council, from the pack, from the world. His voice rang out, alpha command laced with desperation. "The bond cannot be broken without killing all three of us. You want our blood? You'll have ours first." The elders erupted, shouts of treason, of blasphemy, of heartbreak. One elder stood, voice shaking with age and sorrow. "Your father spared her life because he believed the child was innocent. He hid her, gave her a new name, and died with that secret. Are you telling us he was wrong?" Cassian's arms tightened around Ariel. "No," he said quietly. "He saw what we see now." Lucian turned to the council, still holding Ariel close. "She was 8 years old," he said, voice raw. "She hid in the walls and watched her father become a monster. She has spent every day since running from his shadow. If anyone here deserves vengeance, it's her." Ariel buried her face in Cassian's chest, sobs shaking her. Cassian's hand stroked her hair, steady, protective. "We are locking her in the Alpha Tower," he declared, "for her safety. Any wolf who tries to touch her answers to us." The council roared in protest. Cassian's answering growl silenced the hall. Meeting adjourned. They carried her out themselves, one on each side, her feet barely touching the ground. The corridors blurred. She was aware of doors slamming, of guards dismissed, of the world shrinking to the three of them, and the bond humming like a living thing between their hearts. They reached the Alpha Tower, ancient, private, impenetrable, and sealed the door with a bar thick as her arm. Then finally silence. Cassian set her gently on the massive bed, knelt in front of her, and began cleaning the burns on her wrists with shaking hands. Lucian sat beside her, pulling her into his lap like she weighed nothing, arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from the entire world. Ariel broke. The sobs came hard, ugly, 20 years of terror and guilt pouring out. They held her through all of it. Cassian pressed his forehead to hers when the storm finally quieted. "We're going to fix this," he promised, voice fierce. "Whatever it takes. Lucian's lips brushed the mating mark now glowing faintly on her collarbone. "You are not your father," he whispered. "You are our Luna, and we will burn the world down before we let them take you from us." Outside, dawn crept closer. Inside, three hearts beat as one, bound by a magic no counsel could break. But in the courtyard below, the executioner's axe was already being sharpened. Ariel looked up at the two alphas who had just chosen her over their pack, their history, their vengeance. Tears fell, but her voice was steady for the first time in 20 years. "Then let's burn it together." Chapter 8. Ashes and Claiming. Dawn painted the sky the color of fresh blood. The courtyard of Black Ridge Keep was packed shoulder to shoulder with every wolf strong enough to stand. In the center rose the execution pyre, towering, ancient, soaked in oil. Ariel walked between Cassian and Lucian, barefoot on cold stone, wearing nothing but a simple white shift and the glowing triad mark that now blazed at the base of her throat. She had asked for this, not death, truth. The crowd parted like a wound. Some wolves wept openly. Some snarled. Some looked at her like she was salvation and damnation in the same breath. Cassian and Lucian never let go of her hands. At the foot of the pyre stood the council, the elders, the executioner with his axe. Elder Torrin stepped forward, voice shaking. "Alpha Cassian, Alpha Lucian. The law is clear. Blood debt must be paid." Cassian's grip tightened on Ariel's fingers. "Then let it be paid," he said. Calm, lethal, absolute. He released her hand only long enough to rip his black shirt open from collar to waist. The courtyard gasped as one. Across his heart blazed the mating mark, her mark, golden, intricate, undeniable. Lucian did the same a heartbeat later. Twin marks, twin claims, twin declarations. Cassian's voice rang out, alpha command laced with something fiercer than power. "This woman is our fated Luna. The moon sealed her to us under the hunter's moon. Touch her and you touch us. Harm her and you die." Silence. Then the storm broke. Shouts of treason, of blasphemy, of heartbreak. Ariel stepped forward, voice steady for the first time in her life. "My name," she said loud enough for every wolf to hear, "is Ariella of the Ash Court, daughter of the rogue king who murdered your Alpha and Luna 20 years ago. I was 8 years old. I hid in the walls. I watched it happen. I have carried that night in my bones every day since." Tears fell, but she didn't stop. "Your Alpha Valerian pulled me from the fire. He looked me in the eyes and said, 'Live, child, but never come back.' He gave me a new name, a new life, and the hope that one day I might be more than my father's shadow. I never wanted to come back, but the moon brought me here, and these two men—" She turned to Cassian and Lucian, voice breaking with love, "chose me anyway." Lucian's eyes shone with unshed tears. Cassian's jaw was iron, but his hand trembled in hers. Ariel faced the pack again. "I stand here not to ask for mercy. I stand here to offer truth. If blood must be paid, take mine. But know this, the bond the moon forged cannot be broken without killing your alphas too. So choose vengeance, or the future your alphas believe I can help build." The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. Then a single wolf near the back dropped to his knees, then another, and another, until half the courtyard knelt, heads bowed, tears cutting tracks through soot-streaked faces. Elder Torrin was openly weeping. He stepped forward, placed one shaking hand over his heart, and knelt. Cassian's breath left him in a rush. Lucian pulled Ariel against his chest, arms wrapping around her like he'd never let go. Cassian turned to the executioner. "Burn it," he commanded, voice raw. The axe fell from the executioner's hands. Torches were seized. The pyre meant for death became a bonfire of rebirth. Flames roared to the sky, devouring 20 years of grief. Cassian pulled Ariel into the circle of light. Lucian stood at her back, and beneath the rising sun in the eyes of their entire pack, the claiming began. No words at first, just Cassian cupping her face, kissing her, slow and deep and reverent, tears mingling with hers. Lucian's mouth at the mating mark on her throat, teeth grazing, claiming, promising forever. The pack watched in hushed awe as golden light flared brighter between the three of them, sealing what the moon had started. Cassian pulled back just enough to rest his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, loud enough for the whole world to hear. "Blood, lies, history, none of it changes this." Lucian's arms tightened around her from behind. "I love you," he echoed, voice rough with wonder, "and I will spend every day proving you were worth defying the world for." Ariel's sob was half laugh, half prayer. She turned in their arms, pressed one hand over each glowing mark on their chests, and spoke the words she'd never dared dream she'd say. "I love you both. I choose you both. Let the past burn." We start new today. The pack roared its approval, howls rising to join the crackle of the bonfire. Cassian lifted her into his arms. Lucian followed, hand never leaving hers. Together they walked through the flames' shadows and into the keep. Three silhouettes against the dawn, bound by blood willingly given, saved by love stronger than vengeance. Behind them, the old pyre collapsed into embers. Before them, a new kingdom rose from the ashes. She was born to destroy them. She became the Luna who saved them all. Chapter 9. The crown she never wanted. 3 weeks after the ashes of the old pyre cooled, the past came for its due. They came at twilight, rogue wolves who still worshipped the memory of the rogue king. Black-furred fanatics wearing the ash court crest like a brand. They wanted their princess back. They wanted to raise her father's banner over the Vale lands again. They came with fire and chains and the promise of a new massacre. They did not expect the woman waiting for them on the ridge. Ariel stood at the forefront of the Vale army, flanked by Cassian and Lucian, white cloaks snapping in the wind, the triad bond blazing gold across her collarbones like living armor. Behind her, the entire pack, healed, united, ready. Before her, the rogues formed a dark tide. Their leader stepped forward, a scarred brute named Korath, eyes fixed on Ariel with religious fervor. "Princess Ariella," he called, voice carrying across the valley. "Your father's throne awaits. Come willingly, or we take you in chains." Ariel's laugh was cold and clear. "I am not your princess," she answered. "And my father's throne can stay buried with his bones." Korath snarled and gave the signal. The battle began. Steel sang. Wolves clashed. The ridge became a storm of fangs and blood and moonlight. Cassian and Lucian fought like twin gods of war, tearing through the front line, carving a path straight to Korath. But there were too many. A blade meant for Cassian slipped past his guard, opening a gash across his ribs. Lucian roared, shifting mid-leap, massive black wolf meeting three rogues at once. Ariel saw red. She shifted without thinking. Her wolf smaller, faster, silver white and furious, leaping into the fray. The bond flared between them, golden light pulsing with every heartbeat, lending strength, sharing pain. Korath broke through the line, shifting into a monstrous wolf the color of old blood. He lunged for Ariel. She met him head on. They rolled in a blur of teeth and claws. Korath pinned her for one heartbeat, jaws inches from her throat. "You will come home," he snarled in her mind. Ariel's answer was a surge of pure, icy rage. She twisted, sank her fangs into the soft spot beneath his jaw, and tore. Hot blood sprayed across the snow. Korath staggered, human again, hands clutching the ruin of his throat. Ariel shifted back, standing over him, naked and unafraid, silver hair whipping in the wind, the triad mark blazing like a crown. "I am home," she said, voice steady as the mountains. Korath's eyes went dull. The rogue line faltered, then broke. But the cost was carved in red across the ridge. Cassian was on his knees, one hand pressed to the wound in his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Lucian limped to him, human again. Face pale, a deep gash across his shoulder pouring crimson. Ariel ran. She dropped between them, hands glowing with the bond's light, pressing over both wounds at once. "No," she whispered, voice cracking. "Not you. Never you." Cassian tried to smile, blood on his teeth. "Hey, little star," he rasped. "Told you we'd burn the world together." Lucian's hand found hers, weak but warm. "Stay with us," he breathed. "That's an order, Luna." The bond roared to life, golden fire pouring from her heart into theirs, knitting flesh, slowing blood, refusing to let death take what belonged to her. Wolves gathered around them in a protective circle, heads bowed, tears falling silently. Ariel leaned over them both, tears dripping onto their faces. "I'm not losing you," she said, fierce and trembling. "Not after everything. You hear me? You stay." Cassian's eyes fluttered. Lucian's fingers tightened around hers. The light flared brighter. Minutes bled into eternity. Then, miraculously, impossibly, Cassian inhaled a deep, shuddering breath. Lucian's wound stopped bleeding. The bond held. The ridge fell silent except for the wind, and the soft sound of Ariel sobbing in relief against their chests. When she finally looked up, the surviving rogues had fled. The Vale pack stood victorious, and at the center of it all, one woman cradled her two alphas like they were the most precious things in existence. Cassian's hand lifted, weak but steady, to brush a tear from her cheek. "You saved us," he whispered, wonder in his voice. Lucian's fingers threaded through hers. "No," Ariel answered, voice raw but sure. "We saved each other." The moon rose full and silver over the battlefield, washing the blood from the snow, turning the ridge into a cathedral of light and shadow. Ariel helped them stand. Together, the three of them turned to face their pack. And every wolf, warrior, elder, pup, dropped to their knees in the snow. Not for the alphas, for her, their Luna. The crown she never wanted settled on her head, like it had been forged for her alone. Chapter 10. Bound by blood, saved by love. 6 months later. The great hall of Black Ridge Keep had never looked like this. Obsidian walls were draped in silver and midnight blue silk. Moonflowers bloomed from every arch and balcony, their scent sweet and wild. Torches burned with white fire that never consumed. Tonight, the Vale Pack crowned not 2 alphas, but 3 rulers. Ariel stood at the top of the marble steps in a gown the color of moonlight on snow, the triad bond glowing softly at her throat like living starlight. Her hair fell in loose waves, threaded with tiny moonstones that caught every flame. Cassian and Lucian waited at the bottom of the steps, identical in formal black, eyes shining with pride and something deeper, something that had survived fire, blood, and 20 years of nightmares. The entire pack filled the hall and spilled into the courtyards beyond. Thousands of wolves, human and shifted, all silent, all waiting. Elder Torin approached first, older now, walking with a cane carved from the wood of the old execution pyre. He stopped before Ariel and did something no one had ever seen an elder do. He knelt. One by one, every wolf in the hall followed. A sea of bowed heads. Torin's voice carried, cracked with age and wonder. On the night of the massacre, Alpha Valerian spared a child and whispered, "Live, child. One day you will heal what was broken." Tonight we crown that child, not as the Rogue King's daughter, not as a debt to be paid, but as the Luna who pulled her alphas back from death's door, who turned enemies into family, who taught an entire kingdom that love can be stronger than blood. He lifted the crown, ancient silver forged the night the triad bond first appeared. Moonstones and black diamonds glinting like captured starlight. Ariel's breath trembled. Cassian stepped forward first. He took the crown from Torin's hands and turned to her. His voice was soft, meant only for her, yet every wolf heard it through the bond that now linked them all. "You once asked if we could protect you from who you are," he said. "The answer was always no, because who you are saved us. Who you are is everything." He placed the crown on her head. Lucian moved next, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to the mating mark on her wrist. "You carried our nightmares for 20 years, he whispered. "Let us carry your name with pride for the rest of ours." He slipped a ring onto her finger, black diamond flanked by 2 golden wolves. Then together, Cassian and Lucian did the impossible. They knelt. The alpha twins of the most feared pack on the continent knelt before their Luna. And in perfect, reverent unison, they spoke the ancient words, "By moon and by blood, by fire and by song, we swear our lives, our pack, our forever to Ariel Blackwood Vale, our mate, our heart, our queen." Ariel's tears fell like diamonds. She reached for them, pulled them to their feet, and kissed them. First Cassian, slow and deep and full of every promise they'd earned. Then Lucian, fierce and tender and unbreakable. The hall erupted. Howls shook the rafters. Wolves shifted and sang to the moon. Moonflowers burst open in waves of fragrance. Later, much later, when the feasting had quieted and the pack had drifted into the night to run beneath the full moon, the three of them slipped away to the eastern balcony. The same balcony where, 6 months ago, Ariel had fled in terror from the name Princess Ariella. Now she stood between her mates, crown still on her head, their arms wrapped around her from both sides. The moon hung huge and silver, bathing the kingdom in gentle light. Cassian rested his chin on her shoulder. "Remember the first night?" he murmured. "You stepped off that bus in the rain, and we thought the moon had finally answered every prayer we never dared say out loud." Lucian's lips brushed the mating mark at her throat. "And you were terrified of us," he teased softly. Ariel laughed, the sound bright and free and healed. "I was terrified of everything," she admitted, "but mostly of how much I already wanted to stay." She turned in their arms, cupped one cheek of each twin, and looked at them, really looked. Two identical faces that held completely different kinds of love, yet somehow fit together perfectly around her heart. "I spent 20 years running from a name that wasn't mine to carry alone," she said, voice steady and sure. "Tonight I'm keeping it. Ariella, Ariel, Blackwood Vale, all of it, because you taught me I don't have to choose who I am. I just have to choose who I love." Cassian's eyes shone suspiciously bright. Lucian's smile was soft, devastating. Together they lifted her hands to their lips and spoke the final vow, the one no coronation needed. 3 hearts, 1 rhythm, forever. Far below, the pack howled in answer, a song of forgiveness and new beginnings that rolled across the valley like thunder. Ariel leaned over the balcony rail, crown catching moonlight, and called back, one clear, joyous howl that every wolf in the territory echoed until the mountains themselves seemed to sing. When the sound finally faded, she turned back to her mates. Cassian brushed a thumb across her cheek, catching a happy tear. "Ready to go home, little star?" She smiled, radiant, unbroken, whole. "Take me home." They lifted her together, one carrying her in his arms, the other never letting go of her hand, and walked back through the moonlit hall that was now truly theirs. Behind them, the kingdom slept under a peaceful sky. Before them, a lifetime of mornings waited. 3 hearts, 1 rhythm, bound by blood willingly given, saved by love stronger than any nightmare. And under the same moon that had once watched a terrified child hide in burning walls, a queen finally came home. She was the daughter of their nightmare. She became the dream they would kill to keep, and the love they would live for, every single day forever. The end.